couple of months ago, I was just cutting my hair, looking in the mirror. I started thinking about Deion Sanders and if he had hair, then I should be able to get hair, right? So I remembered that ad that they had, with him not having hair and then him having hair.
Follicles. I didn't have any hair here, and they took where I'm plentiful and restored it there. People see you and say, dang.
So I was like, yo, who did his hair transplant? Like, who did Deion Sanders' hair transplant? So I hop on Google and just go ahead and start looking it up. Like, yo, who did Deion? I remember it because I saw the ad before, but I'm like, yo, who did it? So I hop on Google, look it up, and I find Hair Restore Clinic. So I'm like, yo, what is that? Okay, let me look it up. Man, I didn't waste any time. I set up a consultation. I'm like, yo, if they got him back, you know what I'm saying? They should be able to get me back, is what I was thinking. So anyway, I set up the consultation and, I set it up for ASAP, fill out the little information, click confirm appointment. And then I got quoted $20,000. $20,000. I mean, that's a full investment. But here's the breakdown.
Like YOLO wanted to tell you, accept yourself. You don't have to prove shit to no one, accept yourself. And if you
Yeah, that was not a joke. $20,000 for a hair transplant is what I got quoted from Restore Hair Clinic to get my hair full like Deion Sanders. Now, welcome to episode 1 of Undercover Patient, where we take deep dives into the cosmetic industry. And our mission here, our main goal is to go ahead and provide transparency around the cosmetic space. If you'd like to join the mission, then go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. Now, today I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a deep review on Hair Restore Clinic. I give you guys a clinic review along with the price and the sales tactics that they had. And what surprised me most, of course, would I recommend the clinic or not? And lastly, I'll give you guys one quick tip or any type of question I think I didn't answer, but I ended up answering myself. Now, let's go ahead and hop right into it. So, first off, I'm going to show you guys the actual messages between me and the client advisor or the consultant, the person who's basically selling the hair transplant. First thing you're going to realize just by, well, for me telling you and also you looking through the messages is that just like anything else, guys, it sells at the end of the day. So when these client advisors and when these people are talking to you from hair clinics, understand that they're trying to sell you something so they can get paid commission or they can get paid just on the actual sale itself. So don't lose the sales mindset. I just automatically think of it like that because I come from a sales background. So that's how I look at everything. Like there's some kind of selling involved. But with this, it'll become obvious that there was selling involved. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. Now, what we're about to go ahead and look at right here is these are the real messages that I'll, between me and the guy, and I'm showing you guys exactly what had to be sent for me to get the quote that you saw in the beginning. All right, so let's kick it off. Now, first thing first, he sent me over a text message, and the text message was this. As you can see, he's showing me, what somebody else did before, right? So that's the first text message that I got sent. Now, I sent him, had to send him these pictures of myself in order to receive the quote. So there was like 8 different pictures I had to send. This is the first one. So this first pic you see, it was, this is a side view. So right there, all of that for me, you know, you see my SMP, the scalp micropigmentation, right? I have the SMP. So me cutting the SMP, this is the hair that has to be implanted, like actually put into my hair for me to fill all that in, right? So you can see I give it a little bit, zoom in a little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So all that got to be filled up in order for me to actually have, a transplant. So I'm sending him these, and off these pictures that you about to see right here, and I do zoom ins on all of them. This is what he sent me. So I was quoted around 4,000 grafts. Now, keep in mind, grafts are different than units, right? So after me sending him all this, you guys going to see he sent me over the Deion Sanders one. And I was thinking about, like that, like, what I'm saying, the Deion Sanders stuff, because that is what's going to, so all of that will get filled up, right? That's what I was zooming in for. All that in the back got to get filled up. So now, right there in the back, right here, you can tell it's thinner. And that's why they say I should get on medication to save some of my back part. But right, all of that, this is a really good one, actually. So you can tell all of that. has to get filled up, right? So anyway, Deion Sanders got all right. So as we see, Deion Sanders would have got 7,300 follicular units, which would have been about almost 4,000 grafts. So he instantly said, looking at my stuff, this is what this looks like. Now, the reason why I can, almost agree, because look at that. Now, granted, bruh's like 56. They put his, or he was 50 when he got it done. He was actually 50. Um, so he's 50 looking like this, right? And I'm 26 at the time of this. So this is what he was looking like. So instantly he said that I can, look like Deion Sanders right there. Boom. I'm like, yo, that's actually a good, turnaround, right? Because that's crazy. I always remember him being bald for like my whole life. And then he pops up with a full head of hair, right? It's another guy, Matt Forte. He was a running back, I believe, for the Chicago Bears. But yeah, so he was another guy completely bald. And he got about 6,800 follicular units, which is about 3,300 grafts, something like that. 3,400. He was 30. Then the guy ends up sending me the pictures, basically telling me where I get my grafts done and where the grafts will be placed. So as you can see right here, they say 2,500 grafts will be placed in this region right up in there, right? In this region right up in there for me, 2,500 grafts all up in there. Now, it makes sense. It makes sense how he sparsed it out. You can tell where my hair, how it looked from the side point of view, remember earlier? And then right there, how it looked, sparsed out. So I feel like the SMP will make it look, deeper because it gives some kind of underneath. But then he said that the remaining 1,500 will be in that little area right there. Now, as you guys saw in the beginning, I had another area like kind of in the back of my head. So he was saying basically some of that 1,500 will be dropped to the top of the back front of my head, or the back part of my head. So basically, he was saying that this would only be one procedure. I mean, excuse me, two procedures, right? So this is why it's also like the first procedure is going to be 2,500 grafts right here, right? Then the second procedure will be 1,500 grafts, and that 1,500 grafts is going to be in that back part, right? Let me switch up the angle just so y'all can understand more what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is me having the 2,500 grafts basically like right here. That will be one procedure. And then their process, the way it works at Restore Hair Clinic, they do two different procedures, especially if you got a lot of grafts. They only do like 2,500 max per procedure. So I come back about 3 months later and get that 1,500 grafts at the back. So that'll be 4,000 grafts in total. But as you know, in your donor area in the back there, right? You got about 6 to 7,000 grafts that you can do in your lifetime before it starts looking over harvested, or before you start being at high risk of being over harvested, which basically means that your donor area can start to look a little wild. That's basically what it means, right? So that said, with me being at that amount, 4,000 within two procedures, it's not a bad thing, because I actually like the idea of it being two different procedures versus me trying to do all of the grafts in one procedure, which we'll go over, from another clinic. I was quoted all in one procedure, right? All right, so now hopping back into this, as you guys are about to see, he starts to send me over more basically other people are happening as far as other different results. Now, these other results that you're about to see, they're not bad looking. So he's done with that. And now these are the other results right here. So yeah, that guy, I mean, did he really need it done? Looks pretty good. And this lady, hers look decent. You know what I'm saying? That's how I looked before, I guess. And then that's how I looked afterwards. So that was a pretty good transformation. Then he sends me his hair. So then bro sends me his hair and he shows me like he had it done and his turned out really good. I was like, nice. But white people, like their hair kind of comes down differently. Like you can put like a bang or something. So I'm not sure where his actual hairline was at. So I think I would notice in that one. But I mean, that's not to say all white people, but some white people do got hairlines, right? But then like bro had the actual bang, right? So I mean, that's a good thing, is they can cover their hair loss with a bang, right? So it's not a bad thing. But that said, he also sent me over a little bit more information about the doctor, as far as who the doctor will be and what I'll be getting from that doctor. So that happened right here. Now, what you see here, all right, so yeah, now what you see here is information basically about the clinic and a little bit more about the process. Basically, just to check it out. The doctor I was going to be getting it done was Dr. Marko, because there's different and their hair clinics. They only have so many different ones around the country, right? So the one that I was going to be going to was closest to Tampa, was in Tennessee. So I was going to be getting it done by Dr. Marko out of Tennessee. So this guy's sending me the sales rep is sending me information about the process and just a little bit deeper stuff, and then how they give the price, which they calculate each price differently based on the amount of grafts that you need. Now they're basically showing that they don't do the FUT message where they use that big scar method. They give you the FUE, which basically you just extract it, what I'm saying, out of your stuff. So you're good there. Um, right there, you got, results. They're showing you basically how they establish the hairline. Now, if you don't have SMP, they're going to draw your hairline on. I have SMP, so they won't draw my hairline. They'll just basically follow the hairline, right? Um, Also, they're just showing, more stuff. Now that said right here, as you guys can see, this Dr. Bruce Marko is the one that would have been doing mine. He's out of Tennessee, somewhere in Nashville, I think. And they're just giving his background. So it does help you get comfortable as far as knowing a little bit about the clinic and about the surgeon who will be doing it. And each surgeon will be the one that's actually doing it. And you'd have to fly out there to get a consultation before you do it, is what they recommend. So get a consultation before you actually do it. Now, as you can see right here, bro was just hitting me up. This is when things got a little bit excessive, and I can tell this was a sales experience. He hit me up like all those times and basically saying, like, are you selling it? Now, mind you, he's actually calling me too. So he's calling me and texting me multiple times, like a week. Like, he bro texting me like almost every day for a week, and he's calling me like twice a day. Now that could have been part of their system and part of their CRM, but just a word of advice to them that really turned me off just from the whole thing, because you hit me up way too much. I'm like, yo, like, stop it. Like, I understand that it's a sales experience that you want to sell this, but now you're really making me feel like I'm just another product versus like I'm an actual person. Now maybe if I would have answered it, then maybe he would have made me feel like I was a person. But right here, just keep hitting me up like this. Is like, bro, respect the boundaries. So that's how I was feeling right there. All right, now what we about to do next is actually go through. We about to go through the actual contract that I would have signed. That's going to show the real, basically the real, nitty gritty of the procedures. Because that's the thing about when you get these procedures, guys. A lot of times you're getting these procedures and you think, you just get another procedure done, which you are. But at the same time, you got to understand the long-term ramifications. Something can, ideally, everything goes right, but something may not go as planned in the contract, especially when you're in the United States. That's like a good thing about getting your hair transplant done in the United States. Like, ideally, they should be held to a different standard, and there's a little bit more transparency. Ideally, now I'm gonna show you something, and I think they had a clause that made me feel a little bit more comfortable about actually considering to get it done. At the end, we'll talk about is it like if I recommend this or not. But this clause right here, I'm gonna be honest with you. This made me feel like it might be worth it to get it done. Here we go. Now, as you guys can see, I was quoted $19,000 in order to get the hair transplant done. It would have been I was quoted 19,000 to get the hair transplant done. This is the date I got it, and this is the information, right? Now, this $7,250 discount was the one that he tried to sell me on, basically saying it was only until the end of, I believe I got this done in April. So it was like the end of April. You can only get this discount until the end of April, is what he told me. Now, I felt like that was a sales experience, and that's another reason why he kept texting me so much. So to kind of talk about their sales tactics to be transparent with you, like to me, it felt a little overwhelming just because it was like, it's the artist seduction a little bit. You want to, if they want to stray, if I'm straying out, like, yo, give me my space because it does not mean that I'm not thinking about you. So, but if you keep hitting me up, then it's like, yo, like, all right, chill out a little bit. So that said, they kept hitting me up because he said it was 19,000 only for until the end of April, and you can finance it and you can do all that. I'm gonna be real with you right now. I feel like if you gotta finance a hair transplant at $19,000, you should not be getting a hair transplant, bro. I feel like you should be able to pay this flat out if you want to get the hair transplant. You should not be financing it. That's my opinion right there. Now, somebody else might have a different opinion. Maybe it means that much to them. Maybe it's part of their overall look and it's making them money. But if your hair transplant is not making you money, then why would you do more than a card payment? Some people rent payment on your head every month. Like that's literally what it is. All right. So this was 4,000 grafts. That's the plan that I got, I guess, option one. Now what we're about to do here is actually read all the terms in the contract, and the contract's not too long. It's only this page, and that's it, basically. So we're about to read this. Some of it we don't need to read, some of it we do. But the thing that I recommend anybody to do, man, before you sign anything, especially something that's permanent, you certainly want to read over it because they have a contract for a reason. Now, what people would say is, just look over the agreement, get it back to us, whatever. Sign it. I'll sign it right. Sign it while I'm on the phone. Nah, don't do that. All right. So here we go. Let's read it. Let's check it out. Let's see what's up. So the following terms and conditions form a part of your procedure sales agreement and apply to all services and procedures carried out by Restore pursuant to this agreement. This agreement, including these terms and conditions, constitute the entire agreement between the patient, you, or the patient and Restore, and supersede the contents of any other written or verbal communication concerning the subject matter of this agreement, including without limitation website content, email correspondence, and promotional literature. What they just said right there is everything in this agreement matters more than anything that we just advertise, right? So that's why it's important to read, before you get all the way into it. All right, now by signing below, this is just obligation and warrants. Basically telling you by signing below, you agree to everything that's they're saying. You acknowledge your initial meeting with the consultant Restore was an introductory in nature. The consultant is not a licensed medical professional. And prior to any procedure, the patient must meet with and be examined by a licensed medical professional Restore. Now, that's even more just confirmation right here. Yeah, they're not a licensed medical professional because they're a salesperson. So understand that when you're talking to these people that are initially selling you on the idea of getting a hair transplant and paying, that's exactly what they're doing. They're selling you. So don't feel like you have to, make major, really life altering decisions within a quick amount of time just because they're maybe pressuring you or making you feel like you have to do it now or you're not going to take advantage of the discount. You feel me? All right. So now here we go. General obligations. You acknowledge and agree that in the event necessary restore to reschedule your procedure appointment, you will not be entitled to recover any damages for costs you may have incurred as a result of cancellation. Restore reserves the right to cancel or postpone your procedure should your medical professionals determine in their sole discretion that such cancellation or postponement is in the best interest of the patient, or if the medical professional scheduled to perform your procedure are unable to do so for reasons beyond their reasonable control. So yeah, basically they can reschedule it for any reason, and if they reschedule it, then you're okay. They will. It doesn't cost if they reschedule it. But I guess this is we reschedule it right here. Below are Restore's policies regarding fees associated with the rescheduling of a procedure prior to the scheduled date. These fees are assessed regardless of the reason for rescheduling, except as otherwise provided in Section 6, cancellation and rescheduling due to specific medical issues. Is no rescheduling fee charged if a patient requests a procedure to be rescheduled and the request is made less than 14 days after the date of the procedure is booked and at least 14 days prior to the scheduled prior date, procedure date. So as long as you reschedule within 14 days, you're good. A fee of $500 shall apply to any procedure requested to be rescheduled if the request is made more than 14 days after the date the procedure is booked and at least 14 days prior to the rescheduled date. A patient who rescheduled a procedure where the request to reschedule was made 14 days prior to the scheduled procedure date shall be responsible for a rescheduling fee equal to the greater of 2,500 or 25%. Wow. So a patient who rescheduled a procedure with a request to reschedule was made 14 days prior to the rescheduled procedure date shall be responsible for a rescheduling fee equal. What? A patient who rescheduled a procedure with the request was made 14 days prior to the scheduled procedure date should apply made more than 14 days after the date the procedure is booked. Oh, okay. So after the date is booked. So basically, if you book it and then you got to reschedule within 14 days of booking it, then in at least 14 days prior to the actual procedure, then you can reschedule it just for a $500 fee. But if no rescheduling fee charge, the patient reschedule is made less than 14 days after the date the procedure is booked. So as long as you reschedule it less than 14 days after it's booked and 14 days prior to the procedure date, you're good. If you request it 14 days after the procedure is booked and 14 days, so if it's after 14 days, like more than 14 days after it's booked, then you got $500. You gotta pay. That was like confusing me a little bit. So then if you reschedule a procedure where the request is rescheduled 14 days prior to the scheduled procedure. So if you're rescheduling it within 14 days of the actual date, you got to pay 2,500 or 25%. That's basically saying you got the procedure scheduled, for tomorrow for a week from now, and you're trying to reschedule it, then you got to pay 2,500 or 25% if it's scheduled out for a week. You feel me? All right. Hopefully that made sense to y'all. I just had to break it down. It makes sense to me now. If a patient attempts to reschedule on or after the date of the scheduled procedure, if it does not make sense, leave me a comment and I can clear it up. If a patient attempts to reschedule on or after the date of the rescheduled procedure for any reason, including without limit, the patient failure to appear on date scheduled for, or the inability of the physician procedure with the procedure date to the patient intoxication, except otherwise provided in Section 5, cancellation, the patient shall nevertheless be responsible for the surgical and rescheduling or cancellation fees. So if you got to cancel it like the on or after the day of the scheduled procedure for any reason, then it's up to you to actually cover the cost of the cancellation fee or the cost of the fee itself or the cost of the actual procedure itself. All right, number 4. Below are Restore's policies regarding fees associated with canceling a scheduled procedure. These fees are assessed regardless of the reason for canceling, except as otherwise provided in Section 6. 4.1. Any patient who cancels a procedure 7 days or less after the date the procedure is booked and at least 21 days prior to the scheduled procedure date shall receive a full refund. Any patient, so as long as you cancel within 7 days after booking, at least 21 days before you get your procedure, then you get a full refund as long as you cancel within 7 days after booking it. Any patient who cancels that procedure 8 or more days after the procedure is done and 14 days or more prior to scheduled procedure shall incur a 2,500 cancellation fee. Any patient who cancels a procedure within 14 days or less prior to the scheduled procedure date shall be responsible for a cancellation fee equal to the greater of 50% of the total cost of the procedure or $5,000. If a procedure is canceled for any reason, including without limitation, the patient's failure to appear on date scheduled for the procedure, or the inability of the physician to proceed with the procedure due to the patient's intoxication, and except as otherwise provided in Section 5, cancellation and rescheduling due to specific medical issues, the patient shall nevertheless be responsible for the greater of 50% of the fee or $5,000. Cancellations for known but undisclosed medical reasons. Cancellations due to pre-existing medical conditions, which were known by the patient but undisclosed prior to booking. The procedure will be refunded in line with the cancellation policy of this agreement applicable to a voluntary cancellation by patient. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward right there, guys. Like I said, I think the best thing for me to do is actually read this. And if y'all got questions, comment it. And as long as it makes sense to me, I'll just keep reading it. But if it don't make sense to me either, then I'll break it down. That way, just we're not here all night. All right, cancellations and rescheduling due to specific medical issues. Involuntary medical denial the day of the procedure. If our doctor or nurse sends a patient home on the day of a procedure due to a medical condition such as high fever, COVID, or any other illness or condition other than the patient's intoxication, they're making it clear out there. You better not come there drunk or high, that you just can't have it done, or it's on you. So just don't come drunk or high. Intoxication. That inhibits or prevents the procedure from occurring. A $1,000 rescheduling fee shall apply to reschedule to a future date. If the patient opts to not reschedule for a date, the client should be responsible for the fees listed in our cancellation and rescheduling policy. So even if you sick and if you show up sick, you got to pay $1,000. It's crazy. If the patient was unable to proceed with their procedure for the reasons described above in section 5.1, opts not to reschedule or is unable or otherwise fails to return for a rescheduled future date for any reason, including medical reasons, the patient should be responsible for the fees according to our cancellation policy. So if you rescheduled it, you need to show up. If a patient who is unable to complete their initial procedure reschedules to another date due to any medical condition or other reason that is subsequent on that subsequent date is sent home again for blood pressure or pulse issues, being sick, any medical reason, or any other personal reason, the client should be responsible for 100% of the price of the procedure and will not be given a third date without cost. If the client wants to attempt a third procedure date, he will require medical approval from our doctor, if applicable, and will be responsible for an additional full fee for the third procedure. So if you cancel and then reschedule and you cancel again, you're paying for everything no matter what. Client acknowledges if he is getting any type of unpaid satisfaction guarantee procedure or procedure to finish grafts from a previous procedure and cancel the day of the procedure for any medical reason, such as a high fever or other illness or condition that inhibits or prevents the procedure from occurring, a $1,000 fee shall apply to reschedule for a future date. Client acknowledges if he is receiving any subsequent procedure to complete unfinished grafted follicles from a prior procedure to honor restore satisfaction guarantee. The upcoming surgical date agreed to is Restore's complete fulfillment of our commitment and obligation. If client cancels his scheduled procedure for any reason with 2 calendar weeks, 14 days prior to the procedure date, or does not show up for the scheduled procedure, Restore has fulfilled its obligation and is not required to reschedule procedure again. This includes if the patient says he is not feeling well. However, if the patient comes in for the procedure or in the 7 days prior to the procedure and Restore's physicians or other licensed medical staff determine in their sole discretion that it is not in the patient's best interest to proceed due to visible illness, high temper, blood pressure, or pulse, the patient will be responsible for $1,000 cancellation fee. So this basically says even if you cancel and you got to come back, you still got to pay $1,000. Like, so basically, guys, don't cancel. Even if you're sick, you got to pay 1,000 if you don't cancel in a timely fashion. Any client who comes in for their procedure under the influence of any substance, either illegal or legal, such as marijuana, cannabis, THC, or any derivative of them, including edibles, shall be sent home and be responsible for fees listed in our cancellation and rescheduling file. That's crazy. That's really wild right there. I mean, I would say just don't smell like weed. I would think that'd be the main thing. Don't smell like weed, and don't come in just acting crazy is the main thing. Incomplete procedures. If on the date scheduled for a procedure, Restore is unable for any reason to complete the number of grafts, follicles, which were paid for by the patient, Restore reserves the unilateral option to either complete the remainder of the grafts, follicles at a later date or refund the prorated balance for the unfinished grafts. So this means if they decided like, yo, I'm doing your procedure, but I'm all halfway in and I feel like we should not finish this in their sole discretion, they can decide that they can either pay you the money or give you a prorated balance. So just good to know. Confidentiality during admission, photographs will be taken. They will remain part of the patient's medical file. The company is not able to supply copies. I don't know if that means that they can show these photos or not. That'll be something to ask because it's part of your medical file. But does that mean you can show my medical file? I don't know. Miscellaneous. I also acknowledge that Restore Holdings is a management service organization, that my procedure and post-operative care will be the responsibility of the physician. Restore Holdings shall not be responsible or liable for my medical care or the outcome of my procedure. Wow. The jurisdiction for any claim shall be the state where the procedure treatment occurred, and the venue for such claims should be in the county and the state where the procedure occurred. Look at that. I think that's really important, guys. It's little stuff like that. Like Restore is not responsible for what happens with your procedure. If anything, it's the responsibility of the physician. So I assume these physicians are kind of like contractors, like Restore is the sales thing and the pipeline basically, and then they send the pipeline. I'll be the person in the pipeline getting sent to this independent physician's office, and they have some kind of agreement worked out. And Restore is saying whatever happened with that physician and got nothing to do with us. Even though we making the money and collecting it and dispersing it, it has nothing to do with us. Even though they're the middleman of the transaction. So I understand it. But that means that if you get, you ain't satisfied with your hair transplant, don't come suing Restore. Okay, let's finish this off, y'all. Signature and advantage program terms. Or credit card. Payments made with a credit card for surgical procedure, either a deposit and or balance shall incur a 3% surcharge. Might want to pay cash. Yeah, 3% on 20,000. You're not trying to do that, right? All right, here we go. Signature and advantage program. Restore signature and advantage program consists between 1 to 6 surgical days, which may be spaced apart several months between each procedure for the best possible results. The client understands and agrees that she is purchasing a program with a set number or range of follicles, aka grafts, for one flat fee. Any additional grafts performed above and beyond that number will be done at an additional cost. Full payment is typically collected before the first procedure and therefore is considered fully earned once the first procedure is completed. Restore provides future dates that shall be made readily available for the client to choose from, and such dates shall not be unreasonably withheld by Restore. Further, Restore will do its best possible to accommodate the client's rescheduling for subsequent procedure dates. It is the sole responsibility of the client to schedule subsequent procedure appointments at the scheduled intervals set forth in the Signature Advantage program for a particular client. If client fails to schedule such follow-up procedures, the unfinished grafts or unscheduled procedures are non-refundable. By executing below, the client fully understands the terms and conditions of the Signature Advantage program, specifically the conditions respect to payment or unfinished grafts or unscheduled procedures being non-refundable. So what this is saying, guys, and it's pretty big. Remember, I told you that that's basically this. What my hair transplant was going to consist of about two. They said 1 to 6 surgical days, which would be spaced out over the several months, right here between 1 to 6 on several months. So mine was going to be like 2 procedures done over the course of, like, I believe 3 months, right? So they're saying if I don't make it back to Tennessee or to wherever my clinic is at during that time period, then I have the risk of forfeiting my grafts. So you saw it was 2,500 and 1,500. If I didn't make it back for the 1,500 grafts, then I got the risk of forfeiting my grafts. So you got to make it back within your scheduled time frame. That's pretty big right there to know, just because they don't care what happens within that time frame. If you don't make it back, that's on you, basically. All right, so now this is the satisfaction guarantee. And this is something that I said in the beginning that actually gave me like, yo, maybe it is worth it to do this, right? All right, so check this out. The Restore satisfaction guarantee. If your transplanted hair does not grow to your satisfaction and give you the overall result you are looking for, Restore will do an additional procedure for you at no cost. The additional procedure will be at 25% of the amount of grafts paid for on the original procedure. Oh, also, how I got 2 different procedures, I'm paying for both procedures up front. So both procedures got to get done payment wise up front. But that means they still have to honor it on the second one. All right. So additional procedure will be 25% of the amount of grafts paid for on the original procedure. The additional procedure is subject to the following conditions: pending medical clearance and no medical issues. Must have done at least the number of grafts in any given area that we suggested. So if they said 2,500 here and I did 2,300, then I'm not available for my additional procedure. Additional procedure must take place between 12 to 18 months after the first procedure. Must have enough donor hair. Restore will not exceed or violate any of our best practices, hairline density. In the event that any of these conditions are not satisfied, the guarantee obligation will be deemed to have been satisfied, and the patient shall not be entitled to any refund or other compensation. So yeah, basically they're sticking to their regular how they do things there. So grafts should be placed in the zone accordingly and proportionally to what was paid for and planned in previous procedures. For example, on a 4,000 graft plan, if only 1,000 grafts were placed in the crown originally, then only 25% of the 1,000 grafts or 250 satisfaction guarantee grafts should be placed in the crown, not 25% of the 4,000 grafts to be placed in the crown. Restore must complete at least 95% of the grafts on your initial procedure in order to qualify for the satisfaction guarantee. If your procedure falls short by more than 5% for any reason and we are unable to complete the unfinished grafts at a later date, there is a greater chance that you will not be satisfied with the results as the procedure will not be completed as intended, and thus Restore shall not be held satisfaction to the satisfaction guarantee. Denver, minimum surgical fees, eyebrows. All right, so that is it, guys. We got this. Oh wait, transport. This is the guarantee. If your transplanted does not grow to your satisfaction, 25% of the amount of grafts, and it's pending medical clearance and no medical issues. Now, I believe this is kind of tricky, the 95% thing, because who's to say like they did it 95%? That's kind of wild, right? That's a little gray area right there. Restore must complete at least 95% of grafts on your initial procedure in order to qualify to satisfaction. If your procedure falls short by more than 5% for any reason, and we are unable to complete the unfinished grafts at a later date, there is a greater chance that you will not be satisfied with the results as the procedure was not completed as intended, and thus Restore shall not be held to the satisfaction guarantee policy. So yeah, I don't know. Must wait 12 months after the initial procedure to see full result before guarantee takes place. Additional procedures must take place between 12 and 8. So actually, I was wrong at 3 months. It'll be 12 months with the 2,500 and then come back for another 12 after another 12 months to get the 1,500 in the back. Not sure how I'll be looking during those 12 months. I guess, I mean, it'll be growing at the end of the day, but either way, so that's a whole year for my donor area to heal versus me getting 4,000 grafts at one time. You feel me? That's a major difference. All right, so must have enough donor hair. Following the procedure, you did not have another surgical hair restoration procedure performed by any other physician. You have not received or have been undergoing any aesthetic and or medical treatment that can adversely affect hair restoration. You have complied with the with and follow all post-operative care instructions and other medical recommendations made and attended all of your post-operative consultations and other follow-up visits. Restore would not exceed or violate any of our best practice. Additional procedures you take place on one of many available dates. If Restore elects not to perform the additional procedure for any reason instead of the additional procedure and is so in absolute discretion, Restore reserves the right to refund a portion of the price paid for the original procedure. So I don't like that, because if you're paying for the whole thing and they're saying in their sole discretion they can decide not to do it, but they only going to refund a portion of it, that's like it gets a little gray right there, right? You'd almost think it might be better just to like pay separately. Non-surgical guarantees. Ever Hair. If you are unsatisfied with the Ever Hair plan, we will give a credit amount paid in the first year, the initial program, towards the full purchase price of a hair restoration procedure of 800 grafts or more. Laser therapy hat. If you are unsatisfied with your laser therapy hat, we will give you a full credit of the full purchase price towards the full purchase price of a hair restoration procedure of 800 grafts or more towards the full price of an Ever Hair program. Okay. And right there, we're good. Personal contact. Yeah, guys. So we're good, man. At the end of the day, I mean, all right, guys. So we got all the information out there. I want to talk about a couple things as I said in the beginning. First, like I said, the main sales tactic that I saw here when it comes to Restore Hair or Hair Restore Clinic is the speed thing, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Really, I feel like it's one of the like most premature sales tactics. Nothing against the guy who was, who did the actual sales interview or the consultation, nothing against him. But when you're pressing people on speed, it just doesn't sit right, especially when someone's making like I said, a life altering decision. And especially considering the amount is $20,000. Now, the thing is, if you give somebody that time to just consider it and just follow up with, hey, I know this is something to think about, we're still here, da, da, da. But not to call somebody twice a day and to text somebody dang near every day for a week straight. And I have to literally respond like, yo, I'm good. Like, I'm good this month. Holla at me next month or something like that. But he just put sounds good, man. So it really like it's not the consultant fault, the sales agent fault. It really just tells me that that's their sales cycle. They believe it's fast versus a slower one. If they would have put me on like a 1 month drip campaign, every 2 week drip campaign, something like that, that would have made me feel a lot better. But it shows me that they rely heavily on emotional sales, like emotional buys or clients that are buying with the emotional, background. Basically, they appeal to you on the phone, telling you, I look so good, you look good like this, or you could look like this person, or all that kind of stuff, right? And then they tell you the price and they tell you, hey, just for you, we're going to actually do this we got a special running, to the end of this month. And then they're saying, you'll look so good if you just started and da-da-da. So they're just going into your, the thoughts of you of yourself having a hair transplant and having hair, and then maybe some of your insecurities and like leaning on the fact that they can fix it fast, like can happen quick. But that's not always the best sales tactic, in my opinion, because again, when you're making a life altering decision like this, especially for somebody like myself who's going to do their due diligence, then you don't want to make it feel salesy. You don't want it to feel salesy at all. You want it to feel like, hey, we're here. This is what we provide. We understand you got to make this decision, but we're here when you make the decision. So that was I didn't really like that. I didn't like that at all. If I had to just grade their actual sales tactic just within itself on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm going to say that's about a 5, just because it leans on the side of like your sleazy salesman kind of a vibe, right? All right. Now, when it comes to what surprised me the most about the whole entire process was actually how the two procedures and the guarantee. That surprised me the most when it comes to a hair transplant and also any kind of cosmetic surgery. You want to have guarantee. People get this done for peace of mind. So for them to say, hey, we'll be able to give you the peace of mind as long as you have 95% of it from the first surgery done. Now, granted, they're not leading with that advertisement that, hey, it's a satisfaction, guarantee with Hair Restore Clinic or Restore Hair, as long as we took 95% of your hair from the first. Like, they're not saying that, but that is the fine print. So of course, read it, and that's why you're here as well, to understand the fine print of things. But nonetheless, I would like more clarity. How do I know that you're actually taking 95% of it? But I mean, you have to think that at the end of the day, they're relying heavily on their reputation. So people like me or people like you that get it done, they don't want to have, people coming back saying, hey, I don't think they actually took everything. They didn't do my next procedure. So, but that did surprise me. So it surprised me to know that, you can actually get 25%. So for me getting quoted 4,000 hair grafts, 25% of that is like 1,000. So me having 1,000 hair grafts, that if I'm not satisfied, I can go back and get an additional 1,000 hair grafts if I'm not satisfied with the results after getting it all done, everything completed, both procedures, which means over the course of a year. So that shows you that they are in your patient, like they're in the patient's corner for more than just that quick fix, which is different than if you're going over, seas, if you're going overseas to Turkey or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they have the hair satisfaction guarantee. And also, you may be less likely to just go and hop on a plane again. But some people have done it like that. Get a hair transplant done 1 year and then go back and get the second one done. So it just depends on what your comfort level is. But that did surprise me, and the fact that they had that, just to give it a grade out of 1 out of 10 when it comes to their hair satisfaction clause, I would say it's a 8 out of 10. I don't like the ambiguity there when it comes to that gray area with the 95%, or if you didn't get it done. It's a little bit of a gray area, to be truthful with you. Really I don't like it that much, but at the same time, you have to believe somebody like them who's put so much money into marketing that they're going to do everything that they can to keep their name clean. So that's why I give it an 8 out of 10, because nonetheless, I feel like they'll follow through with it if they feel like they did the best job that they could do. So I trust them on that one. I give them the benefit of the doubt just because they're forthcoming with their marketing, and they're in the United States, which a little bit better than going overseas. And also it's different when it comes to the marketing as well. So now, would I recommend this? Now, I'll tell you what, I do recommend it. I do recommend it, but I'll tell you who I recommend it for, right? Like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, if you're spending $20,000 on a hair transplant, guys, you should be paying this flat out. It should be 20,000 dropped on it right away. This should not be financed. If you're financing a hair transplant, then you got to rethink your life priorities. I'm just gonna be real with you. In my opinion, If you're financing a hair transplant, rethink your life priorities, my man, because at the end of the day, your hair transplant is not paying you. You can go put that money down on the house. You know what I'm saying? Go get a rental property and let the rental property cash flow maybe pay for your refinance or your finance hair transplant, right? But if that's what you want to do, like my thing is like, man, go build up your actual real life, and this cosmetic stuff, all that, whatever you think of, it'll come with it. But like pay attention to your actual real life. So if you have, if you're making, 50,000 a month, what I'm saying, you want to drop 20,000 on a hair transplant, then go ahead and do it. But if you're not, what I'm saying, making several $100,000 a year, I don't personally think it's worth it. If you're not making at least $200,000 a year, because that's 10% of your income, bro. So 10% of your income is going to be going just on for hair transplant. I feel like you need to be making $200,000 a year to get a hair transplant from Hair Restore Clinic, at least $200K a year. Now, that's my opinion. Somebody else might feel different. I do like the fact that you can, be in the United States getting it done. And if you live in the city or if you live in a state where they have a clinic at, then you don't even have to get on an airplane. You know what I'm saying? You literally just driving up to the clinic and you good. So that is really good. And maybe somebody else that's worth it. But somebody like me, it just doesn't make sense for me to go to Hair Restore Clinic at this stage of my life and get a transplant, because I'm not going to finance a hair transplant. I'm just not, bro. That's just not the kind of. I don't need to. I don't need to. I love myself, but I'm not saying you don't love yourself if you finance a hair transplant. But I'm just saying rethink your priorities, bro. Like really focus on building real life out here versus a hair transplant. Now, the second thing when it comes to them and their satisfaction guarantee, that's what makes me recommend it. So I like the aspect that if I'm going to spend $20,000 on a hair transplant, at least I got some kind of satisfaction guarantee. So that's what makes me really consider actually getting a hair transplant from them, as opposed to other clinics. So I do like that. Now, when it comes to uh a quick tip or a question like that, I feel like you guys will have. One big thing that I would say, a question that you maybe should ask yourself for this is, why are you getting a hair transplant? What means more to you? Is it the amount of money that you spend to it, or sure you get the best results? Stuff like that helps you figure out where you're going to get the clinic, where you're going to get a hair transplant from, and also helps you figure out maybe if you want to do something in the meantime. Part of the reason why I'm so like I don't need to get a hair transplant right away is because I like my SMP results. I genuinely like my SMP results. Now, when I had my hair was thinning and all that, like I'm not sure how I feel about life. Just be real with you. Like I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else feel like they got to get it done right away because they feel like I'm tired of looking at what I see. To that person, I say try to at least get an SMP. Now I can say the cliche thing, right? Which is love yourself. Of course, love yourself, right? Love yourself as you are in your own state. Like currently, what I'm saying? Never be happy until you love yours. No such thing as life that's better than yours. 100%. I like that. Now, I'm just speaking to you from a real point of view, as the standpoint of us being all human beings. And the reason why you're likely here with me is that you want to see a better version of yourself from the standpoint, want to see what another version of yourself look like. I would say don't go and get a hair transplant at a hair restore clinic unless you're earning over, $200,000 a year. That's 10% of your income gone in a snap of a finger for something that you won't see full results for until at least 2 years, because you're getting at least two different surgeries done if you're getting, 4,000 grafts like myself. Yo, real quick. So I was watching the footage back and I wanted to say real quick that another person that I would recommend getting a hair transformation, a hair transplant from the hair restoration clinic or restore hair clinic is somebody who does not need 4,000 grafts. So if you're somebody who doesn't need the whole 4,000 grafts, like maybe you only need, you know, 2,000 grafts, then the price is going to be in my opinion, a lot better than somebody who needs the whole thing. Like if you only need 1,000 or 1,500 grafts, you're probably only paying, $5,000 to $7,000, which is a lot better in my opinion than maybe paying about that same amount or possibly half that amount. But you're also going to be flying overseas and don't have access to the team who actually did your, transplant. So something to think about, but I wanted to add that in there because I understand everybody doesn't need 4,000 hair grafts. And for the people who needs, under 2,000 or 2,000 under grafts, then maybe this would be a good choice for you or something to consider, because they are more cost effective than some other clinics that are in the United States that will give you, 2,000 grafts and might even charge you the price of 4,000 grafts. So around $20,000 for 2,000 grafts. You feel me? So that's just something to think about. Wanted to share that with you guys. So doesn't make sense. Like, this doesn't make sense. You're spending $20,000 of current year income for something you don't see full results for 2 years, and they have a lot of gray areas that could raise up some red flags. I mean, not red flags, but raise up some kind of miscommunication or maybe some mishaps in the end, right? So my thing is, bro, spend the 20 if you got it. But if you got it, to me, means that you're at least making 200K a year. Maybe that means something different to somebody else because you feel like you need it right away. And if their hair is making you money, maybe if you're in the entertainment industry, maybe if you're like I don't know what you need to do, right? But maybe if somebody with a hair transplant makes you money, then you know what I'm saying, go drop the 20 racks. I would feel like they're safe to do it with them. So the question you have to ask yourself again, am I doing this because I'm ensuring best quality, or am I doing this because I need a hair transplant done right now? If you need one done right now, and if you have the money to do it, then do it. If you feel like you need one done right now, but you feel like you don't have $20,000 to drop on a hair transplant right now, I ain't saying you ain't got 20 racks. I'm saying you ain't got 20 to spend on a hair transplant right now. You about to go buy a house somewhere in the middle of Ohio, not $20,000 on a hair transplant that's gone right then and there. You don't see results within 2 years. Then, my friend, just go get an SMP, bro. You know what I'm saying? Hook yourself up, get the little hair tattoo. It's gonna hold you over, and you're gonna be good until you're able to really make a good decision. Now, but right at this point, you got all the information you need to make that best decision that you need for yourself. So go ahead, be sure to like, subscribe to the video, man. We got more undercover patient videos and episodes coming along with more information in the cosmetic industry. We're on a mission to bring transparency to the cosmetic industry. If you'd like to join that mission, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I appreciate you tuning in as always. Until next time, as always, you know what to do. Get the stepping, get the stepping, get the stepping.
Like YOLO wanted to tell you, accept yourself. You don't have to prove shit to know and accept yourself. And if you